So I wanted to try and do something or start doing something, um, kind of like the basics of nerddom, um, especially subjects I don't really know too terribly much about myself. I've got a younger brother who really likes Warhammer. He's mostly into Old World, um, which is a lot more like more fantasy stuff, whereas Warhammer 40K is a lot more sci-fi fantasy, from what I've come to understand. However, today we're going to go ahead and look at the Emperor of Mankind. I just want to do a basic overview. I've already read part of it, but again, I'm not fully into this like fandom, so it's not anything that I'm super knowledgeable about. I mean, I know some of the basics even before reading the article, but let's go ahead and get into this. This is from the wiki, Emperor of Mankind. The Emperor of Mankind, often referred to by his faithful as the God Emperor, the Master of Mankind, or simply the Emperor. So, right away, obviously, he's an important person in the 40K universe. He sometimes refers to himself as Revelation. Is the immortal, perpetual, and psyker, that's how you pronounce that, Psyker, who serves as the reigning monarch for the Imperium of Man as described by the Imperial Ecclesiarchy and the Imperial Cult as the Father, Guardian, and God of humanity. So right away, like I said before, we've got a very important figure here. Um, and if you don't know anything about Warhammer 40K, trust me, like I said, I don't know that much either. So kind of learning as I go. The Chaos Gods and I'm assuming that's daemons, not demons, of the Warp refer to him as the Anathema, for he is the greatest embodiment of universal order in the galaxy today, and the most potent foe of chaos in existence. He was, and remains, the most powerful human psyker to have ever been born. That right there. He was, and remains, the most powerful human psyker to have ever been born. Now, psykers are just people, um, any sentient being who has psychic ability, if that's correct. Anybody who's a 40K fan and I get anything wrong, please comment, let me know what I got wrong. That way I can know for the future. I don't mind being told I was wrong as long as, you can bring some receipts. He has sat immobile, his body slowly crumbling within the golden throne of Terra for over 10,000 standard years. Although once a living man, his shattered, decaying body can no longer support life and is kept intact only by the cybernetic mechanisms of the golden throne and a potent mind itself sustained by the daily sacrifice of thousands of lives. So the Emperor of Mankind, the most powerful human psyker to have ever been born, is now attached to his decaying body while sitting on the golden throne, and has been so for over 10,000 years, and is sustained by the cybernetic mechanisms of the golden throne itself, and his mind is sustained by the daily sacrifice of thousands. The Emperor chose to sacrifice his immortal life at the end of the Horus heresy in the service and protection of mankind. To humanity's countless trillions across the galaxy-spanning Imperium, he is nothing less than God. Through his Imperium, humanity is united and remains one of the most powerful, intelligent species in the Milky Way galaxy, as well as its most dominant in terms of both population and territory held. United under one government, mankind is able to survive the myriad deadly threats it faces from aliens, the forces of chaos, and the traitors, heretics, and mutants that lie within the Imperium's boundaries. The Imperium's rule, carried on in the Emperor's name since the end of the Horus Heresy by the High Lords of Terra and in a multitude of imperial organizations, has long been oppressive and necessarily harsh. Or has been long, excuse me. The Imperium's rule, cut all that shit, has been long, oppressive, and necessarily harsh. It has also resulted in technological and cultural stagnation and a regression into tyranny, superstition, and religious obfuscation and intolerance that would have horrified the Emperor. So, interesting we have here that he is basically a god. He chose to sacrifice his immortal life. That's what it says. At the end of the Horus heresy, which is something we'll go into later. But again, I've done some reading, so I can give a basic review during this video. So I'm sorry. He chose to sacrifice his immortal life at the end of the Horus Heresy in the service and protection of mankind. But now it's been 10,000 standard years, so that would be every year on Earth is a standard year. So now it's been 10,000 of those. And unfortunately, now the Imperium's rule has been carried on in his name since his basic death has been long oppressive and necessarily harsh, and has now resulted in technological and cultural stagnation, a regression into tyranny, superstition, and religious obfuscation and intolerance that would have horrified the Emperor. Though he is no longer responsive to external stimuli, the Emperor still lies at the very heart of the Imperium's continued existence. Although he cannot be directly involved in the day-to-day running of humanity's galactic government, his existence on the Golden Throne is vital to sustaining the Imperium, since his powerful mind's presence in the Immaterium maintains and directs the Astronomicon, the psychic beacon that makes possible faster-than-light warp travel, and is vital to Imperial shipping, transportation, commerce, and communication. So it kind of sounds like he's been uh, relegated to a cog in the machine. Like, he has to be there in order for certain things to keep flowing. Once he dies, mankind's empire is pretty much going to get shut down, if not, destroyed altogether. However, the maintenance of this beacon requires the aid of other psykers whose life forces are slowly drained away by the Emperor to power the beacon. 1,000 psykers a day give their lives to maintain the Emperor's psychic strength. So that goes back up to here. The daily sacrifice of thousands of lives. So literally, 1,000 psykers a day give their lives to maintain the Emperor's psychic strength. He is said to still guide his race through the psychically reactive divination tool known as the Emperor's Tarot, which select psykers can consult to gain a glimpse of the future and the Emperor's will. He is also said to constantly battle the Chaos Gods in the warp and prevent their further intrusion upon the material universe. His mind must remain vigilant at all times throughout the entire Imperium to safeguard the human race and to offer his protection to the faithful. Above all else, it is mankind's collective belief that the Emperor's divinity that serves as its greatest protection from chaos and other hideous dangers that plague the galaxy. As the Imperial Creed has taught for over 10,000 years, the Emperor protects. Interesting introduction. It's actually a lot longer than I was expecting it would be. As you say up here, the quote, "The Emperor protects," from the Lectitio Divinitatis. So, his original origin, the Emperor is the collective reincarnation of all the shamans of Neolithic humanity's various peoples, the first human psykers. The foul warp entities that would become the four great powers of chaos had not yet fully formed when the Emperor was born, during prehistoric times, somewhere in central Anatolia, which is modern-day Turkey, in the 8th millennium BC, not 8th century, 8th millennium, that's 8,000 BC. That's his original origin. But even before the birth of the Emperor, as humanity grew and progressed, the warp began to become increasingly disturbed by the dark undercurrents of humanity's collective psyche, and the shamans began to lose their former ability to reincarnate into new bodies. Instead, upon dying, their souls were consumed by the entities and daemons of the warp. Eventually, the shamans of humanity, unable to reincarnate, would become extinct, and without the shamans and their psychic abilities to guide the race, humanity would inevitably fall prey to the corruptions of chaos, just as eventually happened to the Eldari. I'm assuming that Eldari is the way you pronounce that because it's AE. In these ancient days, all the shamans of Earth gathered in a grand conclave to decide what must be done to stave off the day when they had all been consumed by the warp. In the end, they decided to pool the shamans decided to pool their collective psychic energies by reincarnating as a single soul in a single human body to create an individual they call the New Man. So that's his original origin story. His current origin story, however, the above account is now considered largely apocryphal. In truth, the Emperor's origin and history prior to unifying Terra is largely mysterious and undetailed, though his immortality and extraordinary psychic abilities still define him. The first mention of the Emperor is by name in Imperial records is when he unified Terra at the end of the Age of Strife in the 30th millennium. So that would be 30,000 AD or BCE, or excuse me, CE, depending on where you want to look at it. Horus mentions that the emperor lived, quote, in Anatolia in his own childhood. When talking of his first meeting with the emperor, it is known that he had been immortal and ancient even before his ascension to the Golden Throne over 10,000 Terran years ago. Because this is now the 40th millennium. That's why it's Warhammer 40K. The Emperor is the new man, the first and greatest of the new race of human psykers. He is also the collective reincarnation of the extinct shamans, sorcerers, and wise men who had guided primitive humanity during prehistoric times. So this part right here still comes from the original origin. So there really hasn't been anything. It says current origin. Really hasn't been anything that contradicts what they've said. It's just it's considered largely apocryphal, but now we're saying that this is true. So as the emperor grew older, his powers began to manifest themselves and became more potent, and he gradually remembered his thousands of past lives, adding all of their knowledge and experience to his own. Jeez. One account of the emperor's origin goes so far as to say that he had mortal brothers and sisters and claims he was born in the 8th millennium BC in a primitive Neolithic village along the banks of the Sakarya River in Anatolia. While he was still an adolescent, the emperor's father was murdered by his uncle. While preparing his father's body for a primitive funeral ritual, he received a clairvoyant vision of his murder. Later, the boy who would become the emperor calmly approached his uncle and stopped his heart with a slight use of his telekinetic psychic abilities, displaying neither sorrow nor malice for the dead. Interesting. According to the emperor himself, this was the moment he realized that humanity needed law, order, and the guidance of a ruler to reach its full potential. So, that's really the biggest thing that defines the emperor, is the fact that he is supposedly the embodiment of order, especially for the human race, set across the galaxy. For thousands of standard years before becoming the emperor, he guided and watched humanity develop over the course of his history, assuming the guise of a large number of historical personages. He was aware of the darker extremes of human nature were feeding the growth of the chaos gods in the warp, and so he sought to promote peace and harmony on Earth and thereby curb the growth of the ruinous power's strength. Whatever his true origins, the man who would become the emperor was the most powerful psyker ever born among humans. Before the emperor began his rise to power, he was also an anonymous perpetual, which is just an immortal, a member of the mutant branch of mankind gifted with effective immortality due to extremely rapid and efficient cellular regeneration. Now, I did look it up, and perpetuals are actually generally able to come back even from molecular disintegration. So that's really interesting. There's only one thing. It's a spear of something. I can't remember what it's called exactly. It's actually created by the emperor himself. I don't know if it was on accident or on purpose, but it was psychic lightning. When it contacted the sands of some planet, starts with a T, it created a certain glass. It looks kind of like a spear, and that thing actually can stop their regenerative abilities if you were to hit a perpetual with it, and allow them to actually just be killed outright. So, the emperor accepted the deaths of the many innocents that resulted from his conquest with great remorse in order to achieve the greater good of unifying humanity and protecting it from the manifest predations of the warp. And then, yeah, I did skip quite a bit, but oh well. With the assistance of the ancient Mechanicum on Mars, who joined with the Emperor and the people of Terra in the Treaty of Mars that formally founded the Imperium of Man in the late 30th millennium, the Emperor created the first space marines and fleets of interstellar ships that would carry his armies across galactic space. The objective was a great crusade that would unify all the planets colonized by humanity during the dark age of technology prior to the age of strife into one Imperium of Man. So remember, this is the 30,000th year, CE or AD, again, whichever one you want to use. So we're currently living in 2022. So this is almost 28,000 years into the future from today. So, of course, technology is going to be, out there. This is already said that people have spanned the galaxy, and so there are human colonies dotted all over the galaxy. The Emperor also created the superhuman Primarchs, from whom the Space Marines' gene seed was later developed to serve as his primary military commanders for the Great Crusade. So the Primarchs, if I remember correctly, they are artificially created perpetuals. So they themselves have, on a little bit of a lower level, of course, than the Emperor. The same basic abilities as far as regeneration. They should all be psychers. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. So, um, and Horus again is as it's set up there. Horus is one of them, and it's part of the reason why. Well, right here, just as the Imperium had reached its apex in the first decade of the 31st millennium, the Emperor's most trusted son, the Primarch Horus of the Lunawolves Legion, later renamed the Sons of Horus, fell to chaos as a result of his own pride, need, and ambition. Horus betrayed the Emperor, and along with fully half the Space Marine legions and the Imperial Army regiments, initiated a massive civil war for control of the galaxy. This rebellion is known to history as the Horus Heresy, though the Emperor ultimately defeated Horus during the Traitor Legion's assault on Terra. He was all but slain in the battle after suffering a crippling loss of limbs and mortal systemic damage. Only the life-supporting Golden Throne has sustained his living corpse in a kind of stasis, neither dead nor truly alive. So that's kind of what it looks like. Get this picture here. That's what he was supposed to look like before becoming Corpse Man. Try to see if there's one of his body sitting on the Golden Throne. Yeah, there's Horus. You can see Emperor versus Horus battled on Terra. That's the Emperor. I'm not sure who that is, but that's Horus. There we go. Emperor upon the throne. That's what he looks like now. Another depiction. Wait, rogue traitor. I could be wrong. A statue. So yeah. A whole bunch of stuff happens in between. This is the Unification Wars section. This is on the Great Crusade. The Unification Wars should be from unifying all of Terra of Earth. And then from there, that and the Mechanicum on Mars, that's what they create the Imperium. And then they go on the Great Crusade. Very long section. There's a lot of information here. The Council of Nicaea, Imperial Webway Project. Oh, look at that. That's an interesting tidbit. The Golden Throne had been built during the Dark Age of technology to allow human access to the Webway and took the form of a heavily mechanized throne created in an unknown type of psychically reactive gold complected alloy that was suspended over a pair of massive doors composed of the same golden alloy. These doors acted as the portal to the Webway and were supposed to be large enough for a Warhound class scout titan to walk through upright. Jeez. Let's see. These things are friggin' huge. Look at that. See if there's any other pictures here. Here we go. Yeah, that's one of those. 22.5 feet. I could be wrong. The Golden Throne was originally located in the subterranean depths of the Imperial Palace where the Emperor's gene laboratory complex had once stood, an area known as the Imperial Dungeon. Hundreds of red-robed Mechanicum tech priests servitors toiled in the Imperial Dungeon as the Emperor sat upon the Golden Throne and used his immense psychic powers to hold the portal into the Webway open for his workers, who constructed a new section of the Labyrinth dimension intended to connect Terra to the rest of the largely abandoned transdimensional transport network. So, I'm just trying to list some of his feats here. Of course, you have the Horus Heresy. The Emperor meditating on what actions to take against his treacherous son, the War Master Horus. This turn of events did not please the Emperor. Subject several of his Primarch sons in particular. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. See, part of the history is going to be up here. Horus was foremost among the Primarchs and was first rediscovered by the Emperor on the dying world of Chthoniya that lay so close to Terra that warp drive was not needed to reach the planet. Horus was the only Primarch to serve in the Great Crusade alongside his father for many solar decades, and was the most highly honored of the Emperor's sons, the Primarch he most trusted and most loved. The two had fought together at the forefront of the early Great Crusade. The Emperor had protected Horus during the siege of Rayus, Regalis, while Horus repaid the favor during the Battle of Goro. During the Battle of Gyros Thravian, the Emperor slew the mighty orc war boss, Garkul Blackfang, after it had held off 3 of his Primarchs. Holy crap. With such a history between them, the Emperor felt Horus was the man to lead the Great Crusade in his absence. Granting Horus the unique title and rank of War Master, the Emperor declared that the time had come for his sons to show him what great leaders they were. Turning his back on direct military matters, the Emperor created the Council of Terra, the precursor to the Senatorium Imperialis, the Imperial Tithe, and expanded the civil governing and bureaucratic bodies of the Imperium like the Adeptus Administratum, before retiring in seclusion beneath the Imperial Palace to work upon the Golden Throne and the Webway project. But the Emperor's decision to not tell his sons why he had retired to Terra, as well as his decision to begin shifting the Imperium's government out of the direct control of the Primarchs on the War Council and to the Terran nobility and bureaucrats whom they detested, sowed the seeds of discord among the Primarchs, and that was the problem. There we go. I knew it was going to be somewhere in there. That's the whole reason why Horus, well, eventually fell to chaos and then betrayed him. So too did disquiet over the Emperor's decision to raise Horus above his brothers by naming him War Master and thus their commanding officer. From these seeds of ambition, pride, and jealousy, the Chaos Gods would find fertile ground to corrupt many of the Primarchs and bring on the horrors of the Horus heresy. So you got the Horus heresy, which I've already explained. He attacks, basically. He turns the Imperium, half the Imperium, against the Emperor and ends up attacking him. Of course, Horus gets killed. There we go. At present, as mentioned above, the Emperor's shattered and mortally wounded body was discovered on the Bridge of Vengeful Spirit by the Primarch of the Imperial Fists, Rogel Dorn, who, following the Emperor's instructions, oversaw his internment within the Golden Throne, the arcane device modified at the Emperor's own direction to sustain his mind and decaying body. The imperial cult, after its establishment as the state religion of the Imperium in the 32nd millennium, would later claim that this internment in the Golden Throne had been necessary so the Emperor could leave the physical plane behind and ascend once more to his proper place in the Immaterium as the one true god of mankind after sacrificing himself to save humanity from the traitor Horus. Okay, so I see a God-Jesus parallel here. Sacrifice, etc. It's interesting. The Emperor had remained in the Golden Throne since his ascension to this day, neither fully living nor wholly dead. Although this device was initially intended to be used as the nexus of the Emperor's secret project to utilize the Eldari Webway for the good of humanity, the Golden Throne also now functions as a complex life support device and psychic amplifier, projecting the Emperor's mind into the warp and across the galaxy. The Golden Throne itself lies in the Sanctum Imperialis, the great hall at the heart of the Imperial Palace guarded by the Emperor's companions, a special and highly elite bodyguard contingent of the Adeptus Custodes. The Imperior's decaying physical form is preserved by the vast arcane machinery of the Golden Throne, which itself is maintained by a legion of tech priests from the Adeptus Mechanicus. His psychic essence is spread out across the whole of the galaxy through the warp, watching over as much of humanity as he can manage in his current depleted state in order to keep the ruinous powers at bay. The Golden Throne is also connected to a massive psychic beacon known as the Astronomicon, which makes faster-than-light travel possible for Imperial starships outfitted with a warp drive by generating a telepathic signal by which the specialized mutant psykers known as navigators are able to navigate through warp space. Whew. So, really, when it gets right down to it, God Emperor, in an ironic twist of fate for a man who fought throughout his life to move mankind away from superstition and religious faith, the Emperor of mankind was already being worshipped as a living deity before the start of the Horus heresy. The Primarch Logar from the Word-Bearers Legion had penned a book, Lectitio Divinitatis, which laid out a compelling case for why the Emperor of mankind was not a mere man, but a god made flesh. It held that no mortal being could have accomplished all that the Emperor had in uniting the techno-barbarian tribes and nations of Terra, and then reuniting much of the human-settled galaxy under his rule. So, like I said, it's kind of a God-Jesus parallel. The Star Child. The concept of the Star Child in relation to the Emperor is similar to that of the Eldari's potential god Yanid, the Lord of the Dead, who, according to their belief, will form in the infinity circuits of the Eldari craft wards when the last of their race has died on the physical plane. The belief of the Star Child is currently considered by the Inquisition to be a vile heresy spread by chaos cultists of Zinj. I used to know how to pronounce that because of my brother, but I don't remember. Zinch, I think. Though the truth of the matter might be otherwise. The concept has two aspects. The first is that the Emperor's soul exists in the warp, where it will form a new entity upon the Emperor's death, the Star Child, who will become the Emperor reborn, and the second is that the Emperor, during his long life on Terra, has many living descendants. Over the almost 50,000 years the Emperor walked hidden among mankind. He formed many families and fathered many children. His male descendants have inherited direct portions of the Emperor's genome, and they are immortal like their father. Although, unlike him, they are sterile in every case. His female descendants are simply normal human women, though they may exhibit potent psychic abilities, particularly forms of precognition. Unlike the Emperor, who is the greatest psyker ever born in the galaxy, the Emperor's scions are actually psychic blanks or nulls, possessing no presence in the warp. As a result, they are both undetectable by psychic means and cannot be affected in any way by psychic or sorcerer's powers. It's interesting, especially because the males inherited direct portions of the Emperor's genome. Okay, it doesn't state that they actually have psychic abilities themselves. Well, I'm assuming that many of them, because it says he formed many families and fathered many children, are probably perpetuals, because, I mean, it says, unlike him, they're sterile in every case. Otherwise, he wouldn't have any descendants at all. A hidden group within the Imperium that call themselves Illuminati. The Illuminati know of the existence of the Emperor's scions and are also aware that the Emperor is failing as his life slowly gutters out despite the creaking ministrations of the Golden Throne. They also know that the father of the Eldari, which gave birth to the chaos god Slanesh, they also know of the fall of the Eldari, which gave birth to the chaos god Slanesh and seek to prevent mankind's own fall to chaos. So all in all, there is a whole lot of information here. What it really comes down to is the Emperor is apparently a total badass. Started off with a really good idea, but ultimately it turned to shit. Kind of sounds like the way of humanity here. Um, but if you like lore and complicated lore, a lot of interconnected pieces, Warhammer 40k has been going strong for quite a while. I would definitely give it a chance, because I'm interested just in what I've already read. Uh, but yeah, let me know what you guys think. Make sure to like, comment, because that helps the algorithm, especially interaction, and share.